Emergivax Sharia, South Africa's first and only fully Sharia compliant family medical takaful and wellness product, wishes all listeners Ramadan Kareem. Download the Emergivac app today and get free immediate access to the Emergivac Sharia collection of du'as, hadith, Quran, and much more. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Listeners and viewers, welcome back with me, Aisha Kaji, on News and Views this morning. Our next guest is all the way from Sydney, Australia. We welcome Kader Trad from the Islamic Friendship Association of Australia, who has been instrumental in referring a case to the International Criminal Court. That's the ICC, not the ICJ. They are taking several Australian politicians, including the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, referring them to the ICC. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Kayser. Welcome to Salam Media.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Just one small correction. I don't want to big note myself. I do support the case. I have been involved in some discussions with the legal firm, but I would not call my contribution instrumental. I'm just a humble assistant.
Well, alhamdulillah. Thank you for the clarification. Can you unpack this case for us a little bit so that our viewers understand more about it?
I think anybody who follows what is happening in Gaza and in the West Bank can clearly see that Israel has been involved in war crimes, not just now, but for the past 80 years or longer. Even before its establishment, there were Israeli terror gangs that were terrorizing the Palestinian people, and that terror has been ongoing. Now, what shocked us as a community that values life, and not just the Muslim community, but many in the mainstream Australian community, we were shocked to hear the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, and some other senior politicians quickly adopt Israel's false narrative about October 7 and quickly justify the unjustifiable murder that Israel embarked on, the daily massacres of innocent people, and the continuing supply of parts of weapons and other military relevant material to Israel, and also being a port where many material actually are docked in Australia before they get transported on to Israel. So the Australian government has, through what it has done, through its rhetoric, and also through the supply of this material, has been complicit. And I would say not just the Australian government, but also the Australian opposition, because not only have they endorsed what the Australian government has been doing, but they have actually called for more action in support of the rogue state of Israel. So it's good. I was happy to see that the leader of the opposition was included in this action. I have personally written letters to the Prime Minister and to the Foreign Minister under the name of my organisation, Islamic Friendship, and we normally only get back bland responses that don't really satisfy. So I don't know how they can see with one eye and completely blind themselves in the other eye. Even though footage had been discovered of the Prime Minister before becoming Prime Minister, supporting the rights of Palestinians, speaking at protests, criticizing Israel. But now he seems like he's best friends with Israel.
Money talks, I understand, both in personal terms and in terms of states. So I understand that this Pine Gap facility has a really crucial role in the supply chain for Israeli defense manufacturing, and that a recent contract was awarded for $917 million to Elbit Systems, that is the largest weapons manufacturer in Israel. This is obviously evidence of collusion in the genocide. I know that very often, we do things like taking referrals to the ICC, and sometimes that's somewhat symbolic. Kayser, in your opinion, how big a chance is there of this referral actually succeeding and gaining some traction?
Well, I was speaking to the principal of the legal, one of the two principals of the legal firm who started this referral. He is actually the principal who is in charge of this case. His name is Brother Mustafa Al Khair, and as you know, Al Khair means goodness. Mustafa.
Mashallah.
Anyway, we had a chat yesterday, and he said it's very important at the moment to give support to the ICC prosecutor by getting as many people as possible to endorse the ICC referral, which people can access online, iccreferral.au. And that'll give you the letter that Birchgrove lawyers did. As of yesterday, I haven't checked it since yesterday, it had almost 8,700 endorsements.
I have it here in front of me. Just a quick question. Is this only for Australians to endorse, or can anybody around the world endorse
I
it?
believe anybody can endorse it. And this was my understanding when I was speaking to Brother Mustafa. It can be endorsed by anyone, anywhere. And the more endorsements, the more support we would be giving to the prosecutor to take this action. Because otherwise, the legal team for the Australian government and the opposition can just say that this is a small legal firm that has started something that is a nuisance. Well, we don't believe it's a nuisance, and we believe it's something very important. Whether the case amounts to anything or not, at least it did generate some important publicity, and it did alert many in the Australian public that the Australian government is complicit. Now, this publicity would not have come about if this case didn't start. And when we say that the Australian government is complicit, they're actually using our tax dollars. And you can stretch it to say that if we don't speak up, then we are also, we as individual citizens, if we don't speak up, if we don't bring our government to account, then we are somewhat complicit as well.
Complicit as well. We have blood on our hands. I've said this over and over again. If our governments are doing something that are infringing on the rights of other people, then we also are complicit unless we demand a change. And we then bloody our hands. And I think in this case, really, I've said it in poetry of mine, bloody our souls, frankly. So thank you very much for that exposition, Kayser. It's been lovely talking to you. I want to actually appeal to all South African viewers and listeners to endorse this letter, sign this letter. It does say at the top, we invite Australians to sign this letter, but you've heard Brother Kayser there saying that anybody can sign it. So please go ahead and sign it. Brother Kayser, I'll also take your details and inshallah get on to other groups in South Africa who can show solidarity with this initiative with you. Would that be welcome, or would you prefer that we don't do that?
No. Look, we are looking up to South Africa, and Mustafa Al Khair from Birchgrove Legals, as well as myself, would like to thank the South African government and the South African people who are standing behind their government. You guys have given us by taking this initiative, you have given us tremendous support and impetus to actually start this case ourselves as well. Mustafa and I were talking about it, but when we saw what South Africa did at the ICJ, it was genuinely beautiful to see. It was very impressive. We saw Israel's gaslighting, and gaslighting was absolutely atrocious. And I think anybody who gaslights for Israel should also be referred to the International Criminal Court, to be honest, because they are justifying the massacres, the genocide, and they're enabling the genocide. So they are more than complicit. They're akin to Joseph Goebbels, who was justifying the Holocaust for the Nazis.
Absolutely. I think, I believe Goebbels once said something to the effect of, if you tell a lie repeatedly and you tell it with conviction, then more and more people start to believe in it until it takes on a momentum and a life of its own, and you no longer have to tell the lie because other people do it for you. It's classic propaganda tactic, isn't it? And unfortunately, our mainstream media around the world, in South Africa, in the US, in Australia, particularly Western mainstream media, have really become complicit in the lies of the colonial occupying state in Palestine.
Absolutely, the corporate media is very complicit. But look, there's two things that I say to people when I deliver a Friday khutbah, because I have access to people. I have access to a silent audience when I'm doing that. People can't interrupt. Alhamdulillah. So I say two things, very important things. I say we understand what politics is about, and we understand that the corporate media is about who supports it, who funds it, and who complains about what it does. What are we doing to bring them to account? We have several avenues of complaint against the different types of media. We should put a complaint every time we see something that is wrong. And with the politicians, we shouldn't just expect them to take a moral stand. A politician, more often than not in every case, just in many cases, is akin to a used car salesman who will sell you anything just to get your vote or just to get your campaign contribution. They're about survival. Instead of just demanding from them, what are we prepared to do to give them support if they do take the moral stand? Now, what I've seen from our community is that when a minister in government stands up and says something positive, and they get pilloried throughout the corporate media, I don't see enough of our people standing up and making complaints against the media or giving support. We should be, and this is for your international listeners, because I know
Absolutely.
in South Africa is the government's pretty good. But for the international listeners, don't just expect something for nothing. You want your politician to take a stand, show him that you are strong enough to protect them when they do take that stand. Don't just expect it without anything in return. We have to. I'm sorry to say this, but we have to earn it. We have to earn it, and we have to show that they're not committing suicide by standing by this just cause.
Absolutely. I so agree with you, Brother Kayser. And in fact, I think that perhaps you as Australian and other international listeners might actually have a slightly mistaken um, take on the South African government. Yes, they've been very courageous in bringing this action at the ICJ, but at a domestic level, we do have politicians and bureaucracies that do not function effectively. We've had a lot of corruption in this country, particularly during the last administration. So I think I should also tell South African viewers and listeners to stand up against those things, encourage our representatives to stand up against it, and then, as you said, support and protect them when they actually do take a stand at our urging for the things that matter to our quality of life, our day-to-day life, and our ethical value system.
So based on what you say, there's plenty of used car salesmen and women in the South African
Africa
Parliament.
as well. Unfortunately, this is the truth. As I said, particularly during the previous administration, but still much of the, I won't say dead wood, but dirty wood remains and needs to be purged. And if the current ruling party wants to stay in power, it's going to need to do that. It's not going to get our support only because it's done so well recently on the international front. Voters also want the government to function effectively at the national, provincial, and local level, as I'm sure voters in Australia do.
Of course, we want transparency and honesty in government, and we want them to take a moral stand, whether the moral stand is with us or against us, as long as they do what is ethical. We, as you know, we are taught in our faith to take constructive criticism, constructive advice that helps set us on track. If we're doing something wrong, we do want someone to stop us and help us do the right things. But this does not take away from the expectation that We want our governments to always be moral and ethical, not just pay lip service to it, and not just gaslight us and pretend that
I mean,
Israel is a victim. Israel has never been a victim from its inception. It
from
has
the
never,
inception.
ever been a victim. It has always been an aggressor. It has always been stealing land or enabling colonial settlers to steal land. And one other point I'd like to add is that the vast majority of Israel's non-Muslim citizens are military trained, and it's not really a civilian population. It's a military trained
Absolutely.
population. Most of them are armed, and most of them are ready and willing to steal land and steal houses and uproot trees and destroy neighborhoods, and they've been doing that for decades. So whatever this gaslighting from politicians, I think it's about time they
They
understand.
understood they can't get away with it anymore. Absolutely.
That's right.
Thank you so much for your time, Brother Kayser. It's been wonderful chatting to you. I hope we'll remain in contact, inshallah. Thank you
Inshallah.
for educating our listeners and viewers about this case at the ICC, a very important one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you. Ramadan Kareem to you and your family. We're going to go to a quick ad break and then come back to wrap up the show.